Let's talk about tacos. Carne asada is one of the most beloved ways to eat one of the most beloved foods on earth, tacos. I had my fair share of this when I visited Mexico last year, and it is absolutely divine, and I also love the carne asada that you can get in Southern California as well. But when I'm stuck at home, this is how I make it. It's very easy. By far the most widely used cut for this is skirt steak. It's very thin and has very rich beef flavor. It's not the most tender cut of steak, but when you cook it correctly and cut it correctly, you can serve it up on your tacos just fine. That being said, a lot of people use flank steak as well, which is fine. I'm just starting off by trimming off most of this hard fat and silver skin from the back side of the steak. I don't think this is an absolutely necessary step. I've done it without trimming and with trimming, and of course it's always better with trimming, but it's not the end of the world because it's a really small amount of fat and silver skin. But I had the time here, so I decided to do it, and I was making this for some friends, so I wanted it to be the best quality possible. I would definitely leave all the fat on the front side because that's going to bring you all your beef flavor. Then the most important part of this is the marinade. This makes our whole dish. This is pretty standard and not groundbreaking, but this is how I usually marinate my carne asada. I basically measure nothing here because marinades like this are so forgiving, and most of these ingredients it's pretty hard to go too overboard. But I'm going to list some rough estimates for ingredient amounts below just so you have something to go by. By the way, I have about 4 pounds of steak here after trimming just for reference. I utilize most of a bunch of cilantro, including the stems. The only time I don't use the stems is for garnish because all the flavor is still in the stems. So I'm only going to reserve a small handful of leaves for garnish later, and I'm just going to chop up the rest. Then I have a jalapeño here which I'm going to dice up. I'm going to keep the seeds and core in this one. It's up to you if you want to discard it, but I don't think this little amount of spice is going to matter in this much steak that we're cooking. And in hindsight, I probably would have used 1 or 2 more jalapeños, but I only had 1 left. I'm also going to mince up several cloves of garlic using my garlic press. Such an essential ingredient for this recipe, don't skip it. Then using my microplane, I'm just going to zest in a couple of limes. If you didn't already know, a good bit of the lime flavor is stored in this outer skin, which we call the zest, and you should always add it with the juice if you're using it in a marinade or something like that. Of course, I'm going to juice both of these limes as well. And then I take an orange, and I don't always use the zest, but in this case I'm going to because I have a lot of steak. But usually the zest of the limes should take care of it enough. But either way, I always use a fork and press out the juice from an orange. All this tanginess goes really well with the beef, trust me. Then just to finish up, I'm adding a good bit of extra virgin olive oil. This helps everything coat the steak, and it's going to give us an amazing sear when we grill it. Then optionally, I season with a little handful of Mexican oregano, which I crunch in with my fingers. And then I usually like to add in a dash of cumin because I love the flavor. I usually take whole cumin seeds and briefly toast them in a dry pan, and then I crush them up in my molcajete. It's always better than the pre-ground stuff. Then just a touch of soy sauce, it brings a great depth of flavor to this, and a pinch of salt and freshly ground black pepper. Finally, I had a little sauce left from a can of chipotles and adobo. I don't usually add this to my marinade, but since I had it and I didn't want it to go to waste, I used it here. And that's your marinade, just mix it up for a couple seconds and that's it. The best way to marinate steaks like this is with a Ziploc bag because it allows the marinade to stay in contact with the whole steak the whole time. I put 2 of my steaks in one bag and 2 in the other, and then I just poured the marinade evenly into the 2 bags. Really massage this in and try to get both sides of the steaks covered to make sure the marinade is touching everything. And try to squeeze all the air out because that's going to really force the marinade to stick. Then I just toss these in my fridge for a few hours. And this is one of the rare cases where I don't think it's better to go overnight. I have gone overnight before, and I think it starts to lose quality after like 8 hours max. There's just so much acidity in the citrus juices that it starts to break down the steak too much. So I think the best window is like 4 to 6 hours, and I wouldn't go past 8 hours if possible. I also flip the bags over every so often just to make sure the marinade is touching both sides pretty evenly. Now when it comes time to cook, the best option in my opinion is a grill, and a charcoal one at that. But that being said, I've also done this indoors on a cast iron grill and it works pretty fine. But now that I have a grill, I'm definitely going to use it. I'm setting up a direct and indirect zone on my grill because my friend is also bringing some chicken thighs that he's marinating, and he requested to have some indirect heat as well. But I'm only going to actually need direct heat for these steaks because they're so thin. I dumped a fully lit chimney starter over some unlit coals and then allowed my grill to come up to heat. For something like carne asada, you want your temperature to be ripping hot, and that's because the steak is so thin you don't want to overcook the inside before you can finish searing the outside. I could fit 2 steaks at a time over the direct side. Just be careful of flare-ups because of all the oil that's on the outside of the steak. I flip these about every minute or so for even searing. It was kind of hard to get those hatch grill marks because I couldn't turn these 45 degrees like I normally would with a steak, but I'm using an instant read thermometer to make sure I'm not going too high or too low on my internal temperature. I pulled these when I was getting readings between 130 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Not everyone that was eating with us preferred medium rare or rare steak, so I wanted to be mindful of them. As you can see, I was also simultaneously warming up the chicken thighs on the indirect side, and once I was able to get through all 4 of my steaks, I moved the chicken over to the direct side to get some nice charring. Anything you cook over charcoal is going to have superior flavor automatically. This video is not about the chicken recipe because I don't have it, but I was pulling these at about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Just let your steak rest for 5 to 10 minutes before cutting in. And yeah, you can see some parts of the steak had some nice medium rare on the inside. That's what's kind of cool about the different thicknesses within the steaks. Some parts will be more medium or closer to well done, while other parts will be more medium rare, so everyone can pick what they want. And if you cut in and start realizing it's not cooked enough to where you want, you can always grab a wok or cast iron skillet and just heat that over high heat, and you can quickly cook the chunks to where you want them. It only takes a few seconds in a hot pan. I also cut up the chicken thighs the same way off camera, and we had quite a feast going. Everyone pitched in a good bit. In addition to that tequila lime chicken, some of my friends brought some tortillas. Others made some pico de gallo, some guacamole. Someone made some corn dip, which was fire. We had some really good yellow rice, and of course we had some chopped white onion and cilantro, as well as some sliced avocado to top the tacos. Forgot the lime wedges in the fridge, of course. And lastly, I also made a homemade chimichurri to top the tacos. It's like my all-time favorite topping for steaks and tacos, and I'm going to show you how I make it really quick. I start with a bunch of flat leaf Italian parsley and cut off the leafy part and chop that up into pretty small bits. And then I use a whole jalapeño. Usually I try to find a red one for color contrast, but I couldn't find one this time at my Hispanic market, so green will have to do. I take out the seeds and stems of this because I don't want my chimichurri to be too spicy at all. And again, I just chop the flesh into pretty small bits. Then I'll either use a shallot or whatever onion I have on hand. I happen to have a lot of white onion this time, so I'm using that. You don't need too much of it, so I'm just going to finely dice up like a quarter of it. Then I'm adding about a half a cup of olive oil. This is the ingredient that you can scale up the recipe with if you need to make more portions. Then just a few tablespoons of red wine vinegar and a couple of cloves of minced garlic. I'm adding in another dash of the cumin that I ground up from earlier, and just another small handful of Mexican oregano, and just finish with salt and pepper to taste. And please do taste stuff like this and adjust seasonings as needed, it's really important. But that's a super simple and versatile chimichurri that you can use on so many things. It's definitely going to make our tacos taste so much better. I also did make a tres leches cake for dessert, but I made an entirely separate video for that, which I'll be releasing Friday. That's why I released this video on Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. But I did enjoy taco night with friends. I didn't film my taste test that night because I wanted to spend time with them. However, I did come back a few days later and have some of the leftovers on camera, so let's enjoy. One of life's simplest pleasures, grilled meat in a tortilla. Of course, I've already tried all this and I've been eating it over the last several days, but it should be an indication that I'm still not tired of it, of how good it is. But I'm not here to waste any more time. Cheers. I mean, there's no surprises there. You know exactly what you're getting. All those acidic and slightly spicy flavors in the marinade come straight through in the steak, and beef just tastes good on its own already. But while I have you here, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into one of the chicken tacos since I have it as well. Honestly, that's just as good. I mean, I don't have the recipe for these chicken thighs, but you can do the exact same marinade that we did for the steak for the chicken, and it will come out just as good. It's a great two-stage recipe where you take a little bit of time the morning of, or just a few hours before eating, and then when it's time to eat, you really don't have much prep to do. You just throw it on the grill and it will take a matter of minutes. I don't have much to say about this other than you need to try it. Thank you all for watching, be blessed, and I'll see y'all next time. That's the good stuff.